Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video, Core Pick live stream for today, Thursday, June 29th. It is a 5-game main slate, so it's going to be a little bit smaller slate today. So the structure that I will be using for today is going over a recap of yesterday's picks, seeing how they turned out, going over to RotoWire, talking about some of the weather reports for the games, any weather concerns that may be a major problem for today. Going to go over to the YouTube community tab and talk about the bottom half of the cheat sheet, top teams to stack for today. And then last but not least, I'll be going over to FanDuel, talking a little bit about the slate in totality, since there is only 5 games in total, which I've typically been doing on these slates that are kind of like 6 games or less. If you guys like that format, be sure to let me know. If you want me to do like a traditional core picks instead on these smaller formats, definitely let me know as well. I just think it's a little bit more valuable looking at the slate in total. So kind of where we're at for today. But in terms of yesterday's picks for the recap, we had Aaron Nola at the pitcher position, had a really good start earlier this season against the Cubs. Not that great yesterday. $9,600, got 21 points. Like I said, a good day to mix a match at pitcher, especially with 13 games in total. Ended up being a mess at 21. Not anybody that really helped us. 5 innings, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 3 walks, but he did end up getting the win, which kind of helped him out a little bit there. So a little bit unfortunate start there, but if you got some mix and match into some other different pitchers, if you ended up on Domingo Germán, probably a pretty good day for you yesterday. Then at first base, we ended up with a Anthony Rizzo, $2,900. Got to 9.4 points. Did end up giving him a hit, a pretty decent point total from a first baseman at less than $3,000. Although there was some pretty good high scoring options yesterday. At shortstop, we had Jordan Westberg at $2,700, got to 15.7 points, so he was a hit as well. In the outfield, we had Jake Fraley at $3,300, got to 13 points. He got that really early on in the game, so I thought it was going to be a little bit bigger day for him overall. Unfortunately, did not end up being the case, but still a really good day for him. Definitely paid off at his price tag. And then last but not least, we had Shohei Ohtani at $4,400, got 21.4 points, so he was a hit as well. So the hitters did pretty well yesterday. If you got some exposure, some different pitchers with these hitters, if you got some decent stacks in there as well, was probably a pretty profitable day for you overall. But with that being said, we're going to stop sharing this screen. We'll go over to RotoWire, talk about those 5 games that we do have for today overall, and kind of some of the weather reports for those games. So just getting that all pulled up right now, maybe taking a minute here as we are speaking about it. Going to close out some of these little ads that popped up too on RotoWire since I haven't done that yet. So the first game that we do have on tonight's slate is going to be the San Francisco Giants and the Toronto Blue Jays. Looks like they have Keaton Winn listed as the starter for San Francisco now at this point in time. Earlier it was looking like Ross Stripling. I've seen anything from Ross Stripling to Alex Wood to Keaton Winn. So kind of all over the place there. Still going to be Toronto as a team that we're going to like to stack just in general. But when we're looking at it from the weather perspective, it's inside, so we have no weather concerns there. Milwaukee and the New York Mets, first real good day in New York in this series. So a 5% chance of rain should be pretty safe there. Going to be a very interesting matchup there with Max Scherzer. Who had a pretty bad start versus Milwaukee earlier this year. We gave up 3 home runs, but last year was really good against them. And then moving over to Houston and St. Louis, just a 6% chance of rain. Actually pretty warm down there in St. Louis today. So ball could be flying out there. Pretty good matchup to hit for hitters in this one as well. And then we have Chicago and Philadelphia, 22% chance of rain over there. Nothing too crazy at this point in time. And then last but not least is kind of the one weather spot for today with the Dodgers and the Colorado Rockies, 53% chance of rain, which is a little bit unfortunate. You never know what you're going to get with that weather out in Colorado. But, it's going to be a pretty popular game. So maybe we get a little bit of leverage on that today in terms of ownership if people are scared off by the weather. But it's definitely one that we will be following throughout the day. If anything majorly changes in terms of weather throughout the day, we'll have it listed down in the comments below, as well as those starting lineups as they do come out throughout the day. So definitely make sure you're checking up on all that as we get closer to lock. But we're going to stop sharing that screen. We're going to go over to the YouTube community tab, talk about the top GPP teams to stack for today. And I think there's a lot of stackable teams. Whoops, brought up FanDuel there, so I apologize for that. So let me bring up the YouTube community tab as we get talking through it. So here we go. So like I said, you're going to be a decent amount of teams to stack today. There's not any like overwhelming pitcher matchups today. Even when you look at a guy like Max Scherzer, should be a pretty good play, probably a pretty popular play at $9,700 today. But like I mentioned, he gave up 3 home runs versus the Brewers earlier this season. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like any of these teams aren't stackable on today's slate overall. So going to be a lot of different options. Feel free to mix and match as much as possible, especially on the smaller slate. It's a slate that I typically like to mix and match even more, trying to get more exposure because it's easier to get take down on these days because there's less probabilities, but there's still a chance that you do end up splitting that with somebody else. So I do have the Blue Jays. They're going against San Francisco Giants. Whoever ends up being the starter today, whether it's Ross Stripling or Keaton Wynn or Alex Wood or you name it, it could be anybody at this point in time. We'll see how that looks as we get closer to game time. But in my notes, I do have it down for Ross Stripling. Brandon Belt's got a home run versus him in the past, so it looks pretty good there. Not a lot of history versus any of these guys, though. So going to be one that we kind of want to mix and match some Blue Jays hitters as the day moves along. And then we have the New York Mets going against Adrian Houser of the Milwaukee Brewers. It's a pretty decent history there, whether you want to go with like Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, mix and match anybody else as you feel fit. I believe Starler Marte's got decent history versus him as well. And then we have the Houston Astros going against Adam Wainwright. Wainwright has not pitched really well so far this season. He's been extremely hittable, giving up a lot of hits. Not a long list of history versus this Astros team. So that will be one that we keep an eye on throughout the day, but definitely like stacking the Astros once again. And like I said, St. Louis, warmer temperatures today. Ball could be flying out of the ballpark. And then last but not least, we got the Dodgers. They are going against, trying to remember who's pitching. Chase Anderson's the guy that is pitching for Colorado today. A little bit of history there, but nothing too crazy at this point in time. Freddie Freeman's the one that has probably the most history, the best history versus him, but definitely feel free to mix and match the Dodgers at your own will. And at Coors Field, probably going to be a pretty popular play once again, unless that weather becomes a real concern as the day moves along. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of GPP stacks. Like I mentioned, probably can stack any one of these teams today because I'm not too overwhelmed by any of the pitching options. We're going to get over to FanDuel, take a little bit more look at these slate and totals. So I'm just going to go find us a cheap contest real quick. It doesn't really matter what contest we enter since, it just has to be main slate, and we're taking a look at the slate in totality. So we're going to start off looking at the pitchers. So we got Max Scherzer, $9,700. A little bit of hit and miss history here versus Brewers team. Like I said, earlier this season, gave up 3 home runs versus Brewers team. I believe it was Brian Anderson. I know Garrett Mitchell was one of them, and I think Rowdy Tellez was the other one that hit a home run in that game. Christian Yelich has decent history versus him with 2 home runs, like 8 for 28, I think I want to say off of him. So there's something to be had there. William Contreras, 2 for 4. So if you want to get off of some of the chalk at pitcher at Max Scherzer, do a little bit of a sneaky Brewer stack and kind of go that way. Obviously, that's more of a GPP type of thing. Then we move down to Taijuan Walker. Pretty decent history versus the Cubs. I don't love the $9,500 price tag, but definitely a guy that's going to warrant some consideration. Obviously, the biggest thing with him, not the highest strikeout guy in the world. Chris Bassett, when we're talking about him, $8,900, not the greatest history versus this Giants team. Pitched against them twice last season, had a 1-point performance and like a 21-point performance. So not going to be the greatest there. Jock Peterson does have pretty good history versus him. He's got 2 home runs against him in his career. That's why he's on the thumbnail today. I think Peterson's going to be a pretty good play, whether or not you're stacking the Giants or even as a one-off. But, Chris Bassett still does have some decent upside. Maybe not quite as popular in terms of ownership. JP France, no history versus this St. Louis team before. St. Louis has really been up and down so far this year, so could be a good start for France, or he could get rocked. Obviously, like I said, that weather is going to be pretty warm there, so the ball could be flying out of the ballpark. And then we get down to Emmett Shaheen at $8,300. Pitched really well in his first 2 career starts, but third career start going against Colorado, a little bit of weather concern there. Probably going to be pretty popular since he's done pretty well so far to start his young career. So a little bit of upside there, but kind of a hit or miss play just in general. And then they have Alex Wood listed as the starter. Ross Stripling I've seen as the starter, and then over on RotoWire is Keaton Wynn. So just whoever for the Giants, probably just not starting any of them going against Toronto. It's a little bit tougher matchup. Plus, who knows how far deep into the game any one of those pitchers is going to pitch. Adrian Houser, very much a hit or miss play against the Mets. If you want to get a little bit contrarian, save some money, you could go with that route. But, like 12 and 15-point performances against the Mets last season. Pretty similar lineup this year as well. So, and the Mets, have hit him reasonably well in the past. Then we keep moving down. I miss Kyle Hendricks there. I'm not sure how I missed him. So he's actually done fairly well against the Phillies in the past, although some of the hitters do have decent history versus him, like Nick Castellanos, Bryce Harper, and then Josh Harrison's the sneaky one against him. Josh Harrison's like 11 for 24 with like 2 home runs versus Kyle Hendricks in his career. So if he ends up starting, could be a very interesting one-off at the very least. But Hendricks, pitching a little bit better as of late, could have a little bit decent upside there at $8,000. Not sure how much ownership he's going to draw, to be honest. Adam Wainwright, I'm not really getting to today. He hasn't been that great going against Houston. Not too excited about that game in that warm weather once again. And then Chase Anderson pitching at Coors Field kind of came back down to earth and don't really have too much faith in him. Doesn't have a lot of upside, but he is cheap at the very least. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of pitchers for today. Moving over to first base and catcher. And going over here, Freddie Freeman definitely in play. He's one of the guys that has decent history versus Chase Anderson. You can definitely play Will Smith behind him. Anybody from that Dodgers lineup is going to be pretty playable today. Pete Alonso, 2 for 5 versus Adrian Hauser in his career. So definitely could warrant some consideration there. And then, Nolan Jones, if you want to get on that side of the game, going against Emmett Shaheen, obviously no history there. Paul Goldschmidt against JP France could have some upside, but hasn't been doing too much as of late. Bryce Harper, 4 for 10 with, I believe, 1 home run versus Kyle Hendricks in his career. Vladimir Guerrero, not really history against these Giants pitchers, but still like him at $3,500. Elias Diaz, you never know what you're going to get out of him, so probably not somebody I'm going after. CJ Cron's better versus lefties, so probably not getting him against Shaheen. Cody Bellinger looks like he's got first base eligibility now, so that's a little bit interesting, but hasn't done too much since he's came back from injury. Lamont Wade, not really too interested in against Bassett, not too much history there, just in general. Patrick Bailey at $3,100, not too interested in. JT Realmuto, if you're getting to a Philly stack at $3,100, does make a little bit of sense there. William Contreras, like I said, 2 for 4 in his career versus Max Scherzer, so there's some upside there, especially if you're going with that Brewers stack just in general. Skipped over Alec Bohm, but not too interested in him at 3,000 today. Wilson Contreras, if you go with the St. Louis stack, you could definitely mix and match him in some there. Just trying to think of who else here that not really too excited about. Jorge Alfaro or Danny Jansen. Jose Abreu is a cheap option at first base if you want to mix him into an Astro stack. Rowdy Tellez does have that home run versus Max Scherzer earlier this season, so I definitely do like him. Brandon Belt has a home run in his career versus Stripling if Stripling ends up being the starter, but Belt's been doing pretty good as of late. $2,700, definitely a decent price tag there. Francisco Alvarez warrants some consideration if he ends up getting the start at catcher today. Trey Mancini, I believe, was 3 for 5 versus Taijuan Walker. So if he ends up starting for the Cubs today, it makes an interesting one of, or if you go after a Cubs stack to kind of get off of maybe some potential chalk with Taijuan Walker just in general. Not too much else here at this point in time. Blake Sable, if you're hoping a home run out of him, at least he's cheap at the very least. Same thing with Dan Vogelbach. Not too much else towards the bottom here. Cody Clemens was down there. Don't think he ends up starting today, though. So we're going to move over to second base. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to let me know. I know this is going to be a little bit longer video since we're going a little bit more in depth. But Mookie Betts, play outfield, second base, shortstop, going to be very much in play against Colorado. Taro Estrada, not too interested at $3,500. Ryan McMahon, you could take some shots versus Emmett Shaheen. It's going to be kind of a boom bust play just in general today. Probably going to draw some decent ownership since third base isn't the greatest. Probably would recommend playing him at third base, though. Nico Horner, not super excited about. Jose Altuve, I'd rather play at $3,200 in the matchup against St. Louis than Adam Wainwright. I believe he's like 6 for 24 or something like that in his career versus Wainwright. Nothing like too spectacular, but he's one of the few guys that at least has some pretty decent history, or at least has some track record versus him. Bryson Stott could be okay versus Kyle Hendricks, Nolan Gorman. Not too much there against JP France. Been struggling a little bit lately, but $2,900 if you can get a home run out of him would definitely pay off at that. When Merrifield definitely mixes in some Blue Jays stacks. Not super excited about Miguel Rojas. Mauricio Dubon, if he ends up starting at $2,700, could be an interesting pay down option. Same thing with Michael Bush. Harold Castro, he's cheap if he ends up starting. He's got lots of positional versatility. Jeff McNeil, you could probably play in a Mets stack against Hauser at $2,600, so could warrant some consideration. Owen Miller, same thing, and Burger stacks. Brendan Donovan's kind of my favorite cheap guy down here at $2,600. If he ends lead off once again for the Cardinals, could be a pretty interesting and probably a guy you want to play in Cardinal stacks just in general. And then Kevin Biggio, if he ends up getting the start at $2,500, he's been starting a lot as of late, so I like mixing and matching him some there. Nick Madrigal's actually been hitting really well lately. Very, very limited upside. He's just kind of a hit guy, a guy that can get you some stolen bases, but he's never going to hit for power. So $2,400 could be interesting if he gets to start once again. That's pretty much it at second base today. We're going to move over to, I believe, third base next, and then we'll get to shortstop and outfield. So third base is like the land that I really don't want to touch today. So Max Muncy has some upside versus Colorado, but third game back. Not really getting to Christopher Morel. Ryan McMahon's probably be my favorite pay up option. Arenado's got a little bit of back thing going on at this point in time, so probably not getting to him. Alex Bregman, do like the upside there versus Adam Wainwright. Not too much history. Matt Chapman, if you want to throw him in some Blue Jay stacks, makes some sense. Let's keep moving down. Like I said, Owen Miller, you could throw him in some Brewer stacks if you're going that direction. Brian Anderson does have a home run in his career versus Max Scherzer, so that he is something of note, at the very least. But third base, really not that attractive today overall. So just kind of mixing and matching some different options, see what ends up working out for you in that direction. Shortstop, not like super excited about shortstop today either. Obviously, you can play Mookie Betts at the top. You can play Trey Turner, who's getting up, really creeping up there in price tag as of late. But definitely could warrant some consideration if you go Philly stack. But I do think Kyle Hendricks is a decent play today. Bo Bichette definitely in your Toronto Blue Jays lineup. Been a little bit slower as of late, though. Francisco Lindor against Hauser makes some sense. Willie Adames really hasn't done too much as of late. Not too interested in Dansby Swanson. Paul DeYoung, if he ends up starting, you could warrant some consideration there. Hope he hits a home run. Tovar, I don't mind at $2,900. Has some decent upside. Been hitting a lot in that 2-hole as of late. Jeremy Pena, I like the matchup against Wainwright. A little bit of power speed combination there. A guy that does get out a little bit too often, though. But $2,800, not a bad price tag. Tommy Edman, you can consider in some Cardinal stacks as well. Not too much else there. Brandon Crawford's actually got pretty decent history in the past versus Chris Bassett, so he would be kind of that sneaky cheap play at shortstop just overall today. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of shortstop. Go over to outfield real quickly before we get out of here. Trying to keep this video as short and sweet as possible, but do understand that it gets a little bit longer when you start talking about the whole slate. Already talked quite a bit about Mookie Betts. JD Martinez, pretty good history versus Chase Anderson in the past, $3,900. A little bit inflated price tag, but still have some interest in him. We talked about Nolan Jones already. Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. If you're going to play one, probably going to be Bryce Harper today. Nick Castellanos. Those are the two guys that have decent history versus Kyle Hendricks in the past. A little bit of a revenge spot for Kyle Schwarber if you want to take that angle at it, but he's been really hit or miss as of late. Kyle Tucker versus Adam Wainwright. If I'm pulling on some Astro stacks, he's going to be a guy that I definitely want to target today. George Springer at $3,400 makes some sense. Randall Grichuk, if he gets in the lineup, could have some upside, but $3,400 still a decent amount to pay for him. I'm going to sneeze here, so I do apologize for that at some point. Then we get to Christian Yelich. Like I said, 8 for 28 with 2 home runs versus Max Scherzer in his career, so a little bit of upside there if you're building out your Brewers stacks. Jack Peterson, like I said, guy I'm going to get to today, whether I'm building out a Giants stack or even as a one-off today, has 2 home runs in the past versus Chris Bassett. I think only like 6 at bats versus him too. Not really getting a Jerkson Profar, probably not getting the Ian Happ, probably Bellinger. We already talked about him coming back from injury. Conforto's banged up now at this point in time. Brenton Doyle, not really getting to. Brandon Nemo in some Met stacks we'll get to today. And he has 3 for 5 versus Adrian Hauser, I believe, as we're talking through it. Jordan Walker, if you want to mix and match him into St. Louis stacks as long as he ends up starting today. Chas McCormick, kind of a sneaky play. I don't mind him today if you want to go down there in Astro stacks, Starlin Marte and Met stacks. Even in general, he's been really popular as of late, so I expect his ownership to be pretty much up there once again. James Outman, if he ends up starting, has some pretty decent upside. Jason Hayward, same thing. Let's see. Lars Nootbaar is kind of a sneaky one at $2,800. If he's in that actual projected 3-hole, could have some pretty decent upside today at $2,800. Kind of missed that one when I was doing my cheat sheet yesterday. Not too much else here. A lot of guys to mix and match. Tauchman for the Cubs, if you want to mix and match him, he's had some decent games up there. A lot of different options that you could go, though. Jeff McNeil, we already talked about. Joey Weimer is 1 for 1 versus Max Scherzer in his career. He also has a walk in that game, but very limited sample size there. He's been kind of streaky as of late, though. Just kind of keep moving down here. A lot of these guys we've already talked about. Not interested in Jake Myers, even if he ends up starting. Jesse Winker's starting to come back to life a little bit. So if you want to do him against Scherzer, but not recommending it personally. Let's see who else is here. Josh Harrison was the last one. You can play him at third base or outfield, $2,000 if he ends up starting 11 for 24 with 2 home runs versus Kyle Hendricks in his career. But that's kind of where we're at just in terms of a totality slate view for today. Like I mentioned before, if you like this bigger slate view on these smaller slates, be sure to let me know. If you want me to use more traditional core picks, feel free to leave that down in the comments, and I'll definitely take that into consideration. Also, be sure to let me know your favorite play on today, whether it's somebody from, the cheat sheet, top stacks. Can't really say core plays today just because it wasn't really traditional core plays today, but definitely interested to hear what you guys have to say. Also, be sure to let me know any MLB DFS questions you do have as well down in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible throughout the day. Like I said, I'll be leaving any weather updates down there, all the starting lineups, everything else like that. If there's any major changes in terms of news or anything like that, starting pitchers, I'll leave that there as well. And then hopefully today I'll get to the MLB prop of the day. Got a little bit busy yesterday afternoon, so I wasn't able to do it, but we'll leave that down as a pinned comment or on Twitter. So definitely be sure to check that out. But with that being said, that's really all that I have at this point in time. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you checking out. If you're checking out my video, checking out my channel for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, definitely consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we got MLB DFS. We got the championship game for USFL DFS. So that will be out later tomorrow. And then later today, I will be doing some CFL DFS for week 4, which will be my first video for CFL DFS. It's a three game slate for CFL DFS this week. USFL and CFL are both over on DraftKings, so be sure to check that out if you haven't done so already, if that's something that does interest you. But with that being said, that's pretty much all that I do have at this point in time. Definitely appreciate each and every one of you taking the time out of your day, whether you're watching live or on replay, to check out this video, check out this live stream. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.